All right, good morning, guys. So like I was mentioning to you the last few days, I'm not actually here today. I'm doing some traveling. So I will be back on Tuesday because Monday is Remembrance Day, so there won't actually be any classes on Monday. So today we have a lesson planned for you, obviously, and then tomorrow will just be a work period. So reminder that you guys do have that handout assignment that's due tomorrow. So if you haven't finished it, don't worry about it. You'll have time to work on it tomorrow morning. Just make sure you try and submit it before you leave for the day tomorrow. If you do have any questions, I should have access to both Teams and email. Okay, so you can feel free to send me a message on either of those. I just can't promise how quickly I'll answer, but I definitely will answer you probably within an hour or two. Okay, so if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to let me know. Otherwise, this will be our last lesson until we all come back on Tuesday, and then tomorrow you guys will just have time to work on your assignment. So the next thing that we need to talk about, and the last thing that you need to know to finish your assignment, is this thing that we're calling f of x. Okay, so it's another part to our frequency tables that we've been dealing with. It's essentially just a fourth column that we're going to add, and it's going to help us determine some things about statistics, some things about data that we're going to be talking about later in the unit. Okay, so it doesn't really make much sense why we're doing it now. We're just sort of understanding how to do it, and then we'll figure out the why later on in this unit. Okay, so mean, median, and mode. If you guys were here last Friday, you'll remember those three things from the video that we watched. And they're going to be a really important part of this unit that we're going to talk about a little bit later on. Okay, and so f of x is just something that's going to help us when we're interpreting the data with those three methods. Okay, so f of x is actually really easy to calculate. All it is multiplying the score, okay, which we represent with x, by the frequency, which we're going to represent with f. Okay. So if we look at this first example here, we have a table that shows the ages of the students in grades 6 to 9, and it wants us to determine f of x. Okay, so first there's a couple things we can do here before we actually talk about f of x. So first thing I want to do is just label this table a little bit nicer, because right now we're just using the abbreviations. Okay, so I just told you above that the score is being represented by x, and I just noticed this word is spelt wrong and it's really annoying me, so I'm just going to fix that. Okay, so x represents the score, and remember that score is just our different data sets. So just like we were doing that one example with ice cream flavors, our scores were those flavors. So chocolate was a score, vanilla was a score, strawberry was a score. Okay, other examples we've talked about were grades. So we had a couple of data sets that showed different grades for certain classes, and those were our scores in that case. Okay, so things like that. So score is just the type of data you're talking about. It's just your different data sets. This column here, F, is going to be our frequencies. Okay, and remember, frequency is just the number of times that each score appears. Okay, so if you're given a big data set, right, if we were given, say, 20 ice cream flavors, okay, you would just count how many times chocolate appears, and then that would be chocolate's frequency. Okay, you do the same thing for all of the other flavors, vanilla, strawberry, whatever it is. You would count up how many times they show up in your list, and then that would be their frequency. Okay, we had this other thing that we talked about yesterday. Oh, geez, I just realized, sorry. I just realized it wasn't showing you guys what I was talking about here. So that's the table that I'm talking about, okay? There was another thing that we talked about yesterday that was called the sum of frequencies, and it kind of just went at the bottom of our chart like this. So remember we talked about that letter sigma, that Greek letter that sort of looks like a funky E. Okay, so sum of frequencies was sort of something that we added at the bottom of our chart, and all that was adding up all of your frequencies. So 13 plus 20 plus 2 plus 1. Okay, so 13 plus 20 will be 33. Plus 2 is 35, plus 1 is 36, so your sum of frequencies is 36, okay? This is an important tool for you when you go ahead to do your cumulative frequencies, okay? Because remember that your cumulative frequency, okay, the very last one that you do, should be the same as your sum of frequencies. So this data table doesn't have space for cumulative frequencies, so we're going to go ahead and add it there. So I'm just going to write CF because I know with my messy writing I won't fit both words, okay? So our cumulative frequency, okay, which I'm just going to put CF again, okay? I'm going to have 4 of these because I have 4 different scores, okay? So if you remember how we did cumulative frequencies when we learned about this yesterday, what you do is we have the first frequency here as 13. Okay, so that's going to be our first cumulative frequency. We don't have any numbers to add to it, it's just 13. To figure out the next cumulative frequency, what we do is we take the next score, which is 12, we take its frequency and add it to the previous cumulative frequency. Okay, so remember, we're adding frequencies, we're not adding scores. Okay, we're not adding 11 and 12, we're adding 13 and 20. Okay, so that's really important to remember. Don't get those mixed up because you'll end up with really different numbers. So 13 plus 20, okay, well that's going to give us 33. Okay, so that's going to be our next cumulative frequency. I'm going to do the same thing with my next score. So my next score was 13 and its frequency was 2. So I'm going to add that 2 to my last cumulative frequency, which was 33. So my next cumulative frequency will be 35. I'll do the same thing for my last score. My last score is 14 and my frequency for 14 was 1. So I'm going to add that to my last cumulative frequency, which is 35, which is just going to give me a final cumulative frequency of 36. Okay, now remember that these two numbers should always be identical. They should always be the same number, which they are in this case. Okay, if you ever get to the end of your cumulative frequencies and you realize that your number does not match your sum of frequencies, it means that you added them up incorrectly. So either you made a little mistake in your addition or you were adding the wrong numbers. Okay, if you were adding up the scores instead of the frequencies in this case, that's where you would realize that you made a mistake. Okay, your cumulative frequency would not end up matching your sum of frequencies. So these two numbers should always be the same. Okay, now the fourth column that we're going to add, this is that one that we're talking about today that's called f of x. Okay, so f of x, and we just write it f and then x is in brackets. Okay, so f of x is just going to be, if we remember how we calculate this above, okay, f of x is going to be calculated by multiplying the score and the frequency. Okay, so f times x, right? So it kind of makes sense why we're calling it f of x. All we're doing is multiplying the frequency, which is f, times the score, which is x. Okay, so in doing this, and I should have brought a calculator in here with me, but we'll see how many we can get through. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply my score times my frequency. So I have 11 and I want to multiply that by its frequency, which is 13. So 11 times 13. Okay, I'm just going to do this the old long-handed way because I didn't bring a calculator. Okay, 33, 0, 1. Okay, I should end up with 143. Okay, so my f of x for score number 11, or score 11, sorry, is 143. I'll do the same thing for my next one. So 12 times 20, right? I'm going to multiply the score, which is 12, by its frequency, which is 20. Okay, and again, I'm doing that the long way here. So 20 times 12 is going to be 0, 4, 0, 2. Okay, it's going to be 240. Okay, so my f of x for score 12 is going to be 240 because that's my product of multiplying 12 times 20. Okay, next one should be a little bit easier to multiply. So our next score was 13 and it had a frequency of 2. So I'm just going to multiply those two numbers together. 13 times 2, a nice small number, is going to give me 26. Okay, so that's the f of x for score 13. Last one is even easier to multiply. Our last score is 14. I'm going to multiply it by its frequency, which is 1. So f of x of score 14 is just going to be 14. Okay, so it's really as simple as that. So let's look at another data set here. Okay, so this one is the data for the length of a leaf in centimeters. Okay, so remember what x is. X is our score, and I don't like this blue, so let's switch to this pink. Okay, x is going to be your scores, f is going to be your frequencies. We're going to add two more columns. Okay, we're going to add one for our cumulative frequency, okay, because we want to practice doing that. And then we're going to add a fourth one here for our f of x. Okay, so another thing that we should add to this table that isn't already there is our sum of frequencies. Okay, so sum, remember, is that sigma letter. Sum of frequencies is what we get when we add up all of these numbers. So 14 plus 20 plus 18 plus 17 plus 7 plus 13. And so what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to pull out the big guns here and get the calculator involved because I don't want to go through this entire example, get it wrong. Okay, so we're adding 14 plus 20 plus 18, 17, plus 7, plus 13. Okay. All right, so that's going to give us a total. When we add all of our frequencies up, we're going to have a total of 89. Okay, so our sum of frequencies is going to be 89. Now we can go ahead and do our cumulative frequencies and our f of x, but we'll do the cumulative frequencies first. So we have more scores in this example than we did in the last one. So let's go ahead and just start working through them. So cumulative frequency for your first score is always the easiest to figure out because it's just going to be the same as the frequency, right? We don't have any other numbers to add to it yet. So our frequency and our cumulative frequency for the first score, which is 1, is just going to be 14. Okay, if we go to the next row, my frequency for my next score is 20, and I want to add that to my last cumulative frequency, so I'm going to have 20 plus 14, which will give me 34. Same thing for the next score. My next score is 3, and it had a frequency of 18. I'm just going to add that to my last cumulative frequency, so 34 plus 18, okay? And you guys can't see it on your screen, but I'm just doing some really quick addition over on the side here. 34 plus 18 is going to give me 52. Okay, so my cumulative frequency is going to be 52. I'll do the same thing for my next score. So my next score is 4, and it has a frequency of 17. I'm going to add that to my last cumulative frequency, which is 52. So 52 plus 17 is going to end up giving me 69. Okay. I'll go to my next score, which is 5, and it has a frequency of 7, and I'm just going to add that to my last cumulative frequency. So 7 plus 69 will give me 76. And then our last score is 13. Okay, our last score is 6, has a frequency of 13, and I'm just going to add that to my last cumulative frequency, which was 76. Add those together, and I will end up with 89. Okay. This is the part where we double check our answers, so I make sure that my sum of frequencies and my last cumulative frequency match, and they do. They're the exact same number, so that means I've done all of my additions correctly, and my cumulative frequency should, in theory, be correct. Okay. Next thing we're going to figure out, we're going to start filling in that fourth column, which is our f of x. Okay. So remember, f of x, in the name, it actually tells you exactly what you're going to do. So you're going to multiply your frequency times your score. So frequency is f, score is x. We're just going to multiply them together. Okay, so our first score is 1, and I'm going to multiply it by its frequency, which is 14, which is just going to give me 14. Okay, I'll do the same thing for my next score. My next score is 2, and it had a frequency of 20. If I multiply those together, I get 40. Do the same thing for my next score. It's 3, and the frequency is 18. Multiply those together, and I should get, not 36, it should be 36 plus 18, should be 54. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing for my next score. So my next score is 4, and it has a frequency of 17. So I'm going to do 17 times 4, which is going to give me 68. Okay, so that's my f of x for score 4. Next one I'm going to do, I have a score of 5, and its frequency is 7. I multiply those together, and I'll end up with an f of x of 35. And then the last score that I have is 6, and I want to multiply it by its frequency, which is 13. Okay, so 13 times 6 is going to give me 78, I believe. Okay, so again, f of x, really simple to calculate. It's just multiplying your score times your frequency. Okay, we have one more example here, so we may as well just go through it. Okay, so again, we're only given 2 columns in our data set here, or a frequency table, so I'm going to add the other 2 for us. So we're going to add on the cumulative frequency, and then we're also going to add in f of x. Okay, and this time what I'll do, I think, is do that in one color, and then I'm going to change colors for what we write. So frequency, sum of frequencies. All right, so let's say blue. Okay, so this is my data, right? I have my scores and my frequencies. I want to fill in the blanks here. So first thing I can fill in is the sum of frequencies, and all I do is add these numbers together, right? So 13 plus 19 plus 15 plus 11. Again, I'm going to recruit the calculator for this just to make sure that I don't make any addition mistakes. Oops, where did my calculator go? Okay, let's make this smaller so I can actually see the numbers. So I'm going to add 13 plus 19 plus, what were my last two numbers? 15 and 11. Okay, 11 should be 58. Okay, so my sum of frequencies should be 58. Okay, so now I'm going to go through and I'm going to figure out my cumulative frequencies. And I don't know why I missed that second bracket there. Okay, cumulative frequency for your first score is really simple. It's just going to be the same as your frequency because there's nothing to add to it. So cumulative frequency for 21 frequency for 21 was 13. So its cumulative frequency is also 13. Okay, next cumulative frequency, I'm going to take the frequency from my next score, which is 19, and add it to my last cumulative frequency. So 13 plus 19, if I add those together, I should get 32. Okay, same thing for my next score. My next score is 23. I'm going to add its frequency to my last cumulative frequency. 32 plus 15 should give me 47. Okay, and then my last cumulative frequency, I'll do the same thing. So my last score is 24 and it has a frequency of 11, and I'm going to add it to my previous cumulative frequencies. So 47 plus 11 is going to give me 58. Okay, this is the point where I double check my answers, make sure that my sum of frequencies and my final cumulative frequency match, and they do. Okay, they're the exact same number, which means I did all of my addition correctly. Next thing I'm going to do is fill in the f of x portion of my table. Okay, so f of x tells you literally in its name what you're doing. You're multiplying f, which is frequency, times x, which is score. So I'm going to take my scores, multiply them by their respective frequencies, and that will be it. Okay, and again, we have some big numbers here, so I'm probably going to break out some long division, oh man. Okay, long multiplication. Okay, so my first score is 21. I want to multiply it by its frequency, which is 13. Okay, so we're doing 21 times 13. Okay, so that's going to give me, let's see, 273. Okay, so f of x for our first score is going to be 273. Looking at the next score, it's 22, and we want to multiply that by its frequency, which is 19. So again, I'm going to bust out my long multiplication skills that I'm sure you guys all remember how to do and love. Okay, let's do 18 plus 1 times 2 times 2, 8, 11, 4. Okay, should be 418. Don't quote me on it. If I'm getting these wrong a little bit, don't tell me. Okay, you guys get the point though. You're just multiplying the two numbers together. Okay, next score was 23. I need to multiply that by its frequency, which is 15. So 23 times 15. Okay, that's going to give me 5, 15, 10, 11, 3, 2. Okay, it should be 345. And then my last score here is 24, and its frequency is 11. So I'm going to multiply those two numbers together. 24 times 11 is going to give me, let's see, 264. Sure, you guys can double check my math and you can all laugh at me when I'm not there and, oh, Holly, I can't do long multiplication. It's fine. I won't be mad about it. I'm not there to see it. Okay, so in theory, these are all of our f of x's. So f of x, whether my multiplication, my very quick longhand multiplication there is all correct or not, you get the gist of it. It's just taking your scores, which are x, okay, and multiplying them by your frequency, which is f, okay? So again, it probably doesn't make too much sense why we're doing this, but like I said, we're going to worry about the how for right now. So our introduction is sort of just figuring out the how of how we calculate all these things. And then we'll get into the why later in this unit when we start talking about things like mean, median, and mode, and other ways of interpreting data. Okay? All right, so I'm going to leave it at that for today. Those are all the examples that we have. So a reminder that you do have that assignment to work on, so feel free to do that. You should have all the information you need now to finish the assignment. If you do have questions, let me know. I'll respond to you as soon as I can. I might be out of service for a while, but I'll answer when I do have an opportunity to. Again, tomorrow will be a work period, so if you haven't finished your assignment, you'll have time to do that tomorrow. And other than that, you guys have a great weekend, and I will see you all on Tuesday.